Am I the jerk for refusing to dance at my friend's wedding? My friend is getting married in a week, and they are having gender-mixed bridal parties. I am a woman, but I am in the groom's bridal party. Last week, I received a message from the groom saying the bride doesn't want to do their first dance alone because she's nervous, so they are asking all the people in the bridal party to dance too. He said he would pair us up, and we had to learn the waltz if we didn't already know it. I responded and said I wasn't really comfortable dancing in front of that many people. I have bad anxiety, and he knows this, and that I don't know how to waltz and probably won't have time to learn in just 2 weeks because of prior commitments. I had a friend who was also in the groom's party reach out to me and tell me he also isn't comfortable doing it for similar reasons, including the fact he works 11-hour days, 6 days a week. Considering there are 10 people altogether in both parties, I suggested that my friend and I sit out, and they can have the other 8 people dance with them. The bride then loses it at me and asks how I can be so selfish and why I am ruining their wedding. She said when I accepted to be in the bridal party, I knew I would have to make sacrifices, and if I wasn't willing to, then I shouldn't have accepted. She went on a huge rant about it, calling me a horrible person and said I need to just shut up and do it because it's her wedding and that's what she wants. I explained that I thought it wasn't fair to drop this on us 2 weeks out from the wedding, and that if this had been brought up earlier, I might not have accepted, but at least I would have had time to prepare and make that decision. She buckled down and said it was a reasonable request and that I need to grow up and do it and stop being selfish. Up until this point, I have done everything and anything asked of me in regards to the wedding without complaint. As far as I'm aware, the other person in the bridal party who didn't want to do it didn't receive nearly as much abuse as I did. I'm starting to feel like she doesn't like me because at one of the 3 pre-wedding brunches we had to go to, everyone got a box with their name on it, and mine was spelled wrong and crossed out with the correct spelling next to it. My name is a bit oddly spelled, so I didn't think much of it at the time. Am I the asshole here? You are not the problem. Asking someone to learn a waltz and dance in front of a crowd with 2 weeks' notice is a pretty big ask, especially for someone with anxiety. The bride's reaction to the refusal was completely over the top, and calling someone selfish and horrible is not an appropriate way to handle a disagreement. It's understandable not to be comfortable with it, especially given how accommodating you've been throughout the wedding planning process. Am I the jerk for telling my mom to stop talking so loud? She said she never wants to speak to me again, and we haven't spoken since. I am 22 years old and live with my parents after graduating college in May. I moved back in to save money while starting my new job. My relationship with my mother has always been challenging. She has been strict, distrusting, and emotionally volatile. I am constantly trying to please her, and she is never one to apologize or take accountability. Last night, we went out for my parents' wedding anniversary. Everything was fine until my mother started loudly criticizing a man in designer clothing on a nearby yacht. I mentioned that I knew him because he often visited the restaurant where I worked and was very generous with tips. Embarrassed, I quietly asked her to tone it down. She got defensive, called me names, and said I ruined her anniversary. She started crying, said she never wants to speak to me again, and stormed off, taking the car keys and the card we were using to pay. My father had to go after her to get the keys and card. She then said she would take the train home because he did not defend her. My father is calm and collected, which often makes her angrier. After my mother left, we all cried at the table. I expressed my love and appreciation for my father, who was touched as nobody had ever told him that before. My mother stayed at my aunt's house and hasn't come home yet. She canceled a trip we had planned to visit my sister because she did not want to be alone with me. We haven't spoken since. A similar event happened with my sister a month ago. My mother loudly criticized an employee at a store where my sister works, but at a different location. My sister, who just got promoted, asked her to keep it down. My mother stormed out and did not talk to her for days. The employee reported my sister to headquarters for acting suspicious because she was crying. My mother did not apologize. When we got home from dinner, my father and I went for a walk, and I ended up throwing up from the stress. I haven't stopped crying since. My father suggested family therapy. I have been in therapy for years for depression, anxiety, PTSD, and grief. I have recommended therapy to my mother many times, especially after a tragic loss, but she says she does not need it. I told my father it sucks being in this situation. I am the one doing the work in therapy to try to communicate better and have better relationships. As a 22-year-old, I should be the immature one, but my mother, in her 50s, is running away and verbally abusing everyone. I feel like the asshole, but I don't know if it's the years of gaslighting from her speaking. I don't know how to proceed, especially since I'm living under my parents' roof, until I can save enough to pay off my student loans and rent an apartment. She told me she never wants to speak to me again, and I respected her wishes, mostly out of pettiness, by not speaking to her. I won't have a conversation with her until she apologizes. Am I the asshole here? You are not the bad guy in this situation. Some people thrive on drama and create these cyclones around themselves to fulfill that craving, and your mom is one of these people. Go minimal contact with her and use gray rock communication until you can move out. You'll never change your mom or have her approval, so stop banging your head against the wall. Am I the jerk for being tough on my sister when she told me her stepkids, but especially her stepson, ruined her experience of having her children. My sister, Martina, who is 34 years old, started dating her husband, Kyle, who is 36 years old 5 years ago. Kyle lost his first wife a year before they met. Within another year, Martina met his 2 children from his first marriage. Her stepson was 7 years old at the time, and her stepdaughter was 4 years old. 6 months later, they found out they were expecting a baby together. Her stepson had a very rough time with the news. Her stepdaughter also reacted, though she and Kyle believed her stepdaughter copied her brother more than anything. Her stepson said he did not want them to have a baby. He said some hurtful things to Martina, cried a lot, and did not want to celebrate with them. The kids were placed in therapy, but it was not an overnight fix. When she was pregnant for a second time, her stepson reacted with more sadness. Her stepdaughter reacted with some anger. It was not as bad. The hurtful comments were not made the second time. However, neither child was happy about it. Martina and Kyle got married after the birth of their first child and before she was pregnant with their second. Things are not perfect with them all today. Martina expressed to me recently a lot of bitterness toward the kids for ruining her experience of having children with their reactions. She felt it was unfair that they never showed excitement or happiness about their 2 younger siblings. She said her stepson acting sad both times upset her because he received help and still acted like his mother had just died and like they were doing something wrong by having children and getting married. She said he has never been the big brother to them that he is to his full sister. Where I might be the asshole is I told her that no matter how she felt, those kids lost their mother, and her stepson especially remembered their mother and had a lot of change in 2 years. I told her she can feel upset, but those kids had no say in these events. I told her she is the adult and she should not have let that resentment build so much. She told me the tough love act is cruel and I should be supportive. Am I the asshole? You are not responsible for this. Those poor kids have been through hell, and it seems that dad was more interested in moving on than investing in his children. Kids internalize what they can't vocalize, and it comes out in many forms. Allow them to mourn and grieve before introducing a new person into their lives. Am I the jerk for shouting at a dinner party? I, a 20-year-old male, joined a couple of acquaintances for a dinner party in our apartment block. The hosts of the party, a 22-year-old male named Aita and a 23-year-old female named Virgo, were vegetarians and wanted to practice cooking meat for their culinary experience. In my conversations with them, they mentioned that they didn't want to force vegetarianism on others, so I thought I'd be willing to go to their dinner party. I also told them that I am allergic to peanuts and other tree nuts, and they said they wouldn't cook with any of those ingredients. The meal consisted of cheesy breadsticks, sliders with lettuce wraps, and ice cream. After the ice cream, I suddenly started feeling horrible. When I stepped out of their bathroom, I must have looked horrible because my friend Horace told me that my eyes were red, and my nose was too. I asked for the ingredients list and Aita told me that he threw away the recipe list because he didn't want to have the temptation in the place, and that Virgo had just thrown out the trash. I said that wasn't good enough, and by this time, I felt some indigestion in my stomach. Horace grabbed me a bag and emptied it. Inside was a receipt that said Beyond Meat among the other ingredients. I threw up in the bag and shouted, "What the fuck is in that Beyond Meat?" Virgo said that it's just beans and peas. I threw my keys to Horace and told him to run for my EpiPen in my apartment, while another partygoer kept my head above the toilet. The other partygoers were asking if they really did eat beef or if they ate something vegan, and Virgo said, "We were hoping no one could tell the difference." Horace returned with my EpiPen and injected me with it. While I was feeling the initial effects sink in, I said, "Why the fuck did you do that?" This made Aita wince and he went quiet. I kept asking him why he did that. Horace took me to the emergency room. While Horace was driving, Aita called Horace and said that I had ruined the party by yelling at him. He said he could have properly explained what happened and it could have all turned out right. I told Horace to hang up, and Horace carried me to the emergency room. I talked with my doctor and he said that some peas trigger peanut reactions. Virgo tried calling me, but I blocked her number in contact. Here I am, typing on my phone on Reddit for a quick judgment while recovering with an IV bag. Am I the asshole for yelling at a party after getting an allergic reaction? I'm deleting this account when I get home. You are not in the wrong here. You had a potentially life-threatening allergic reaction after clearly explaining your allergies to your hosts, who decided to experiment by misleading their guests about the food. They are both the assholes for not only deliberately deceiving people, but also for getting upset after sending someone to the hospital. Don't lie to your guests, especially when severe allergies are involved. It's unhinged behavior. They ruined the dinner by lying, not you. Am I the jerk for telling my dad I'm not a toy he can take out when he needs me and discard once I've served my purpose? I am a 22-year-old male, and I have a twin sister named Ren. When Ren and I were 4, our mother died from liver cancer. She was 30 years old. I know that would be difficult for our father, going from a happily married father of 2 to a widower with no family close enough emotionally for support. But he was a better father to my sister than to me, and that started before our mother died. It just stood out more after. My father was an affectionate and caring father to Ren. She was his little girl and he cherished her. If she fell, he would pick her up, kiss her tears, and clean her cuts. He was gentle and compassionate with her. When she was upset, she could sleep in bed with him. He would snuggle with her on the couch. He would pull her out of school sometimes and take her for father-daughter dates. When she was bullied, he was relentless in dealing with the school and fought hard for her. He went out of his way to make sure she was loved and supported. Growing up, I heard the words tough and strong a lot. I heard the word man a lot, and I was still so young. He never cuddled me, kissed away my tears, or carried me. He never even said I love you to me. There was nothing gentle about him when it came to me. He was rougher and harsher with me. He expected me to be tough, to be a man, and to be strong. If I had a nightmare, I was sent right back to bed. When I was bullied horrifically in high school, my father didn't want to know. There were times when Ren and I would both fall. Even if I was bleeding more, she was the one he comforted. It was never me, whether it was both of us falling or just me. He never did father-son dates. The most interest he ever showed in me was when I could help him do guy chores, like moving stuff. I tried to approach this with him on a few different occasions, but I never got to finish. He always cut me off for one reason or another. It got to a point where I expected it if I tried. I moved in with my best friend's family after I finished high school. Ren lived at home for 2 more years. My father only called me when he wanted something. He did it again the other day, and I decided it had to end. I told him I am not a toy he can take out when he needs me, and then discard me once I've served my purpose. I told him I am his son, not his helper. I brought up how he never says he misses me or says I love you. He never showed me love or affection, and I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. My father sent me an email in response, saying I was being very harsh. He said I was never his little girl, and boys are raised differently. I replied that I was never trying to be his little girl, but I was his little boy, and he should have shown me love too. He responded again that I accused him of discarding me like a possession, which was unjustified. Am I the asshole? I think you are not in the wrong here. Some dads have this toxic mindset that showing love to their sons makes them weak, while they dote on their daughters. It's baffling because showing love to any child isn't a sign of weakness. Just because someone is a boy doesn't mean they don't deserve love and compassion. You deserve better, and it's totally okay to set boundaries now. Am I the jerk for refusing to sleep on a pull-out couch during vacation? I, a 28-year-old female, planned a family trip with my parents and my brother, a 25-year-old male. Before I officially booked the Airbnb that we would all be splitting the price on, I sent each of them the listing, showing how many bedrooms and what accommodations were available. I made sure to double-check with my brother as the house only had 2 bedrooms. One room had 2 full-size beds, and the other had a king bed. I asked if he would mind sharing a room with me since 3-bedroom houses in this area were harder to find. He said it was fine because we would each have our own bed and asked me to book it. Once our parents signed off on it, I booked it. When we arrived, before we even had our first night's sleep, my brother declared he thought he and I should alternate sleeping on the pull-out couch in the living room. I said I was not going to do that. If he did not want to sleep in the room designated for us, that was fine. But I was not sleeping on a pull-out on vacation when there were 2 beds. I asked why he did not want to share a room, and why this did not come up sooner. He said we were adults and he was too old to share a room. I asked why he did not bring this up sooner. He said he figured I would agree to the pull-out situation. I said he should not have assumed or at least had a conversation with me. He kept insisting, and I said no. If he wanted to sleep out there our whole vacation, fine. But I was not alternating when I paid for a bed. Him sleeping on the pull-out led to several conflicts with our parents, as he would get mad if they came into the living room in the morning while he was still sleeping. But as they pointed out, it was the living room, a public space. If people wanted to hang out in the living room at night, he would start bugging us to go into our room so he could sleep, as early as 8 p.m. We were on vacation, and we were going to stay up a little later and hang out. I always offered to let him sleep in the extra bed in the room, but he refused unless I promised that I would sleep on the pull-out that night, which I did not do. By the end of the 7-day, 6-night trip, he was irritated with all of us over this. My parents and I feel that he is the one who put himself in the situation, and that there was an alternative to him sleeping on the couch, but he chose not to. However, my brother is insisting that I should have swapped with him. Am I the asshole for not sleeping on the pull-out? You are not responsible for this. Your brother agreed to the sleeping arrangements during the booking process, so it's baffling that he expected to switch them upon arrival. His behavior, throwing a fit and acting like a stroppy toddler, is just plain weird and unnecessary. He had every opportunity to discuss his alternative plan beforehand, but instead, he sabotaged himself with his actions. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.